It started with a question that should have been simple, a question about justice, about policy, about the very future of communities across America. But before Jasmine Crockett could even form a complete thought, the sharp, intrusive voice of Jesse Waters cut through the air. 9 times. 9 relentless interruptions that echoed across the studio like a hammer striking stone, each one more audacious than the last. The camera panned nervously between the two figures, Waters leaning forward with a smirk, eyes flashing with the thrill of provocation. Crockett seated with a poised calm that seemed almost unreal under the pressure. The audience in the studio shifted in their seats, some leaning forward, some recoiling, unsure whether to gasp or murmur. Every pause Crockett attempted was swallowed by Waters' aggressive interjections, leaving viewers at home gripping their screens. Social media notifications began to explode, tweets, live reactions, hashtags trending within minutes, people outraged, intrigued, and hungry for the next moment. The tension was palpable, like a storm about to break, a room electrified by the collision of arrogance and dignity. Waters' interruptions were calculated, each one designed to unsettle, to provoke, to derail. He wasn't just challenging Crockett's ideas. He was challenging her very presence, testing whether composure could survive the relentless barrage of public scrutiny. Yet Crockett didn't flinch. Every glance, every measured pause, every subtle inflection of her voice whispered a quiet confidence that hinted at something far more devastating than a verbal duel. It hinted at inevitability. And then, as the 9th interruption hung in the air like a suspended breath, Crockett's eyes locked with the camera, and the studio seemed to hold its collective breath. People sensed it, even if they didn't yet understand it. Something monumental was about to happen. The weight of history, of perseverance, of dignity in the face of disruption, pressed against the confines of that debate stage. But no one expected what she would say on her 10th sentence. It left the entire room stunned. This was more than a televised debate. It was a battlefield where the future of policy, justice, and American values was being quietly, yet fiercely contested. Every viewer watching from their living rooms, scrolling on their phones, or tweeting their reactions, sensed the magnitude of the moment. This wasn't just about political points or sound bites. It was about representation, identity, and the power of truth in a landscape dominated by interruption and bravado. The stakes were enormous. Decisions made in this room, statements uttered under the glare of cameras and spotlights, had ripple effects that would echo far beyond the studio walls. Jesse Waters embodied a brand of confrontational politics that thrived on chaos, disruption, and spectacle. His smirk, the tilt of his head, the precise timing of his interruptions, all of it was calculated to dominate the stage, to drown out voices that might challenge his narrative. His style was aggressive, unyielding, and designed to unsettle. Each jab, each premature interjection, was a test, a way to assert control over the debate before the debate had even begun. The audience could sense it, even before the first words were spoken. This was a man who believed that intimidation could replace reasoning. Jasmine Crockett, by contrast, was a masterclass in composure. Every gesture, every pause, every carefully measured inflection carried weight. She radiated intelligence and authority, the kind that comes from years of preparation, personal sacrifice, and unwavering dedication to her principles. While Waters sought to provoke, Crockett absorbed, analyzed, and positioned herself for impact. She was not reactive. She was deliberate. In her eyes you could see the clarity of purpose, a quiet fire that refused to be extinguished by noise or arrogance. The contrast between the two couldn't have been sharper. On one side, impulsive aggression seeking to dominate. On the other, disciplined resolve standing firm. The audience felt the tension in every frame, every camera angle highlighting the battle, not just of words, but of character. Comments, hashtags, and whispers of admiration and outrage swirled online as viewers debated not just who would win, but what the outcome meant for the broader social and political landscape. Every interruption, every rebuttal, every carefully constructed sentence began to take on meaning beyond the moment itself. What happened next wouldn't just decide the debate. It would define perception, influence conversations, and mark a turning point in how courage and composure could confront audacity and disrespect. With tensions at an all-time high, every word, every pause mattered. Jesse Waters wasn't new to controversy. Over the years, he had built a public persona that thrived on provocation. on dominating conversations before they could unfold naturally. From late-night television skits to live political interviews, Waters' brand of commentary was unmistakable, loud, brash, and unapologetically confrontational. He interrupted, he mocked, he reveled in the discomfort of others. Headlines often read like a running tally of his audacity. Waters cuts off guest mid-sentence. Television host sparks outrage with mocking tone. Interruptions as entertainment, Waters' style explained. Each clip, each viral moment only cemented his image as a man who thrived on control, a man who used spectacle as a substitute for substance. But behind the smirk and the quip lay a pattern that viewers familiar with his career could recognize. Waters' interruptions were rarely strategic in the sense of advancing dialogue. They were weapons aimed at discomfort, at undermining credibility through intimidation. Colleagues and critics alike often noted his reliance on the shock factor over preparation. In interviews dissecting his past debates, pundits remarked on how he seemed more invested in the performance than in the policies at hand, more concerned with winning a moment than advancing an argument. His persona had become predictable, a calculated rhythm of interruption, laughter, and forced cleverness that masked the gaps in deeper reasoning. Social media had long been a battlefield for him. Clips of his most infamous interruptions circulated endlessly, often accompanied by hashtags of outrage or mockery. Viewers shared, debated, and dissected his every word, creating a feedback loop that reinforced his style while also exposing its weaknesses. One headline captured it perfectly. Waters thrives on chaos, falters when pressed on substance. Another. Interruptions as identity. How Waters' persona became bigger than the issues. Public perception was polarized. Some admired the confidence, the audacity. Others cringed at the arrogance, the dismissive tone. In the moments leading up to his confrontation with Jasmine Crockett, all of these patterns were on full display. His eyes darted, scanning for openings, searching for weakness. Each interjection, each interruption, was executed with the precision of someone who had practiced this dance countless times. Yet beneath the bravado, there were signs of vulnerability. Moments when his cadence faltered, when the audience's reaction hinted that not everyone was buying into the theatrics. Clips from previous interviews showed that when pressed by someone truly prepared, someone unshakable, Waters' confidence could waver, cracks appearing in the armor he so carefully cultivated. Even commentators who often supported his perspective acknowledged it. Waters' style works until it meets someone immune to theatrics, one political analyst noted on a widely shared post. The interruptions are a defense mechanism, a way to maintain control when the argument gets too precise, too revealing. These critiques were subtle foreshadowing, hints that the very weapon he wielded, relentless interruption, could be turned against him if the opponent held steady, if the timing and precision of counter-arguments were perfectly executed. By the time the cameras turned to Crockett, the audience had a clear sense of what they were witnessing, not just a debate, but a showdown between a man whose career was built on spectacle and a woman whose composure, intelligence, and preparation were about to challenge everything he had relied upon. Every glance, every pause, every smirk from Waters carried history with it, a legacy of interruptions, a public persona shaped by arrogance, and an unspoken vulnerability that few had ever seen exploited. But arrogance has a way of meeting its match, and Crockett was ready. Jasmine Crockett's story begins not under bright studio lights, but in communities where the weight of injustice was tangible and the demand for true leadership urgent. From her earliest days, she was surrounded by the realities of systemic inequities, the families striving to make ends meet, the students fighting for quality education, the neighborhoods battling neglect. These early experiences did more than shape her worldview. They forged a resilience that would become her defining strength. Every challenge, every moment of frustration in her community became a lesson in strategy, empathy, and unwavering commitment. Her path into public service was neither easy nor predetermined. Crockett dedicated years to education, law, and advocacy, working tirelessly to elevate the voices of those too often ignored. Whether negotiating policy changes, representing marginalized clients, or navigating the labyrinth of political bureaucracy, she demonstrated a rare combination of intelligence and patience. Her mind was sharp, analytical, capable of dissecting arguments with precision, but always tempered with a deep understanding of human impact. colleagues often remarked on her ability to remain calm in the most heated of discussions, to listen fully before responding, and to translate complexity into clarity without losing nuance. This was not someone easily rattled. Every challenge Crockett faced in her professional life became a training ground for moments like the one unfolding on the debate stage. Her calmness under pressure was earned, a product of years navigating environments where stakes were high, scrutiny was relentless, and the temptation to react impulsively was constant. Unlike many who relied on force or volume, Crockett's power came from precision, preparation, and patience. She had learned that true influence didn't come from overpowering others, but from holding one's ground and letting truth speak for itself. Beyond her professional rigor, Crockett's journey carried deeply personal dimensions. She knew what it was to face skepticism based on appearance, gender, or background. She had encountered moments where credibility had to be earned not once, but repeatedly, in spaces that questioned her authority before granting respect. These experiences nurtured not only resilience but a keen sense of strategy, understanding when to wait, when to strike, and when silence could communicate more than words. Her composure in the face of interruption, in the face of provocation, was not innate. It was cultivated over a lifetime of navigating systems that tested her at every turn. Her intelligence was matched by her empathy. Crockett's ability to read a room, to anticipate reactions, and to craft responses that resonated on both logical and emotional levels made her uniquely equipped for the high-stakes confrontation ahead. She understood that a debate was not simply an exchange of opinions, it was a theater of persuasion, influence, and perception. Every gesture, every pause, every carefully chosen word carried weight, and she had spent years mastering this craft, knowing instinctively how to turn moments of pressure into opportunities for impact. Those who worked with her knew she possessed a quiet authority that inspired confidence. Teams followed her lead because she combined vision with pragmatism, intellect with humanity. Opponents often underestimated her, assuming patience was passivity, that calmness indicated weakness. Time and again, however, Crockett proved that measured precision could dismantle aggression more effectively than any loud retort. She had witnessed firsthand how arrogance faltered against preparation, how impulsiveness could be used against itself, and how dignity and strategy could transform confrontation into triumph. As the debate approached, all of these elements converged on the stage. Crockett's past, her struggles, her victories, her relentless preparation, was not a backdrop. It was a foundation. Each interruption by Waters, each smirk, each attempt to derail her, encountered someone who had faced far greater challenges, someone who had honed her responses in the crucible of lived experience. The audience at home, whether aware of her journey or not, could sense it. The calm, unshakable presence that radiated confidence and commanded attention without ever needing to shout. Every lesson learned, every struggle endured, every quiet victory and hard-won insight had prepared her for this moment. Her patience, her poise, her strategic mind, these were not abstractions. They were weapons, tools, and shields all at once. In the face of repeated interruption, she would not merely survive. She was poised to turn disruption into opportunity, arrogance into revelation, and a single sentence into a moment that would define the debate. Every lesson, every struggle, had led to this defining moment. The debate had begun in a controlled, formal cadence, but it quickly erupted into chaos. Jesse Waters leaned forward, eyes sharp, voice cutting through the studio air, each interjection timed to interrupt, to provoke, to assert dominance. One by one, Crockett's carefully prepared sentences were clipped short. The first interruption drew murmurs from the audience, a flicker of surprise on the commentators' faces. By the third, viewers at home were tweeting in disbelief. Again? She can't even finish a thought. The studio camera captured a mix of gasps and shifting seats. Tension was thick enough to feel through the screen. Waters' tone was aggressive, loud, deliberate, an unrelenting wave against which Crockett's poise seemed almost surreal. He spoke over her, leaned into the frame, smirked when she paused to collect her words, as if daring her to rise above. Every interruption was calculated, a test of patience and presence, designed to rattle and destabilize. His style had worked countless times before, and in the past it had seemed unstoppable. The audience, both live and online, could feel the rhythm of his aggression, each cutoff punctuated by murmurs, raised eyebrows, and subtle exclamations from commentators caught in real time. But Crockett remained unwavering. She inhaled, let the disruption pass, and resumed speaking with measured cadence. Her words were precise, her tone steady, her facial expressions calm yet commanding. Where Waters sought to dominate through volume, she held ground through clarity. Even under pressure, her arguments were coherent, persuasive, and strategically timed, creating a striking contrast that the camera couldn't ignore. Panning shots caught every subtle glance, the tension in the room magnified by the interplay between aggression and composure. The live audience became a character of its own. Whispers spread like wildfire, a collective anticipation building with each exchange. Social media lit up, hashtags trending, GIFs circulating, clips looping. Crockett holds her own, again! One tweet read, "Waters' interruptions are relentless, but she isn't rattled." Another commented, "The digital crowd mirrored the studio's tension, amplifying every pause, every smirk, every moment of defiance." The debate had evolved into a spectacle, not just of ideas, but of character, a public test of fortitude versus bluster. By the seventh interruption, frustration was visible, even in Crockett's subtle facial expressions, a human acknowledgement of the struggle to be heard. But she never allowed it to tip into anger. Every rebuttal was calculated, every word a building block for the climactic moment to come. Waters, sensing the slight cracks, leaned harder, speaking faster, more aggressively, as if volume alone could tip the scales. The audience felt the mounting intensity, the interplay of dominance and resistance becoming almost unbearable, a tension that threaded through every camera angle and reaction shot. And then, the ninth interruption landed, cutting her words short once more. The room seemed to hold its breath. Live feeds captured whispered astonishment, commentators muttering in disbelief, viewers at home frozen in anticipation. The stage was set. The relentless barrage of aggression had collided with unyielding composure. And then, after 9 interruptions, the 10th sentence changed everything. The 10th sentence began almost imperceptibly, a quiet insertion into the charged tension of the debate stage. Crockett's voice, calm yet commanding, cut through the din of interruptions like a sharpened blade through silk. There was no haste, no defensiveness, only the deliberate cadence of someone who knew precisely what she was about to unleash. The audience, both in the studio and at home, leaned forward as if drawn by an invisible current, sensing that the moment they had been waiting for was finally arriving. Waters, confident in his pattern, initially did not recognize the danger. He smirked, leaning back slightly, preparing for what he assumed would be yet another paused, interrupted thought. But Crockett didn't pause. She didn't falter. Her words unfolded with precision, each syllable meticulously chosen to dismantle not just his argument, but the persona he had cultivated over years of confrontational television. The camera cut close to her face, capturing a steely resolve and an almost imperceptible flicker of knowing triumph in her eyes. The first half of her sentence built steadily, like a carefully coiled spring. The content was sharp, factual, undeniable. She referenced policies, public impacts, and social consequences, weaving together data and moral clarity in a way that felt inevitable, yet electrifying. The studio audience shifted in their seats, murmurs of recognition and astonishment rising in real time. Every interjection from Waters now seemed reactive, desperate, a man scrambling to retain control of a debate that had clearly begun slipping from his grasp. Then came the pause. Crockett allowed a heartbeat, just long enough to let the weight of her words sink in. The cameras captured it, a collective intake of breath, the subtle widening of eyes, the almost imperceptible nods of agreement from the commentators. In that pause, the room itself seemed to hold still, the tension magnified by silence. It was a dramatic beat that heightened the impact of what followed, a cinematic device that required no scripting beyond her presence and poise. When she continued, the second half of her sentence landed like a hammer. It was not loud or aggressive. It was precise, undeniable, and devastating. Every word exposed the flaws in Waters' line of attack, each clause reframing the narrative to highlight dignity over disruption, substance over spectacle, intelligence over arrogance. His interruptions, once a shield, became irrelevant. The more he attempted to interject, the more it became apparent that he had miscalculated. He was unprepared for someone who could withstand pressure with such elegance and turn it into a rhetorical triumph. Reactions were instantaneous. In the studio, commentators' mouths fell open. Whispers turned into audible gasps. Camera pans caught the audience frozen mid-reaction, hands clutched to chests, eyes wide with disbelief. Even Waters, usually unshakable in his smirk and bravado, faltered. His confidence wavered, a subtle tightening around his jaw, a brief stammer in his attempted retort. The interruption machine that had defined his career had met its match, and for the first time, the mask of control slipped to reveal vulnerability, uncertainty, and the shock of being outmaneuvered. Social media erupted as if cued by the crescendo itself. Tweets exploded within seconds. Jasmine Crockett just ended the debate in one sentence. Waters can't recover. She's untouchable. Hashtags climbed into the trending charts. Crockett wins. Mic drop moment. Dignity over disruption. Clips of her sentence looped endlessly, GIFs capturing her calm poise juxtaposed with Waters' flustered attempts, and commentary videos dissecting the strategy went viral within minutes. Influencers, journalists, and political analysts shared their astonishment, praising the deftness and courage it took to maintain composure under relentless attack. The power of her words extended beyond the studio. Viewers at home, particularly those who had felt marginalized or underestimated, found in Crockett's moment a sense of validation. Here was someone who faced aggression not with anger or defensiveness, but with preparation, intellect, and moral clarity. It was a reminder that patience and strategic thinking could overcome noise and intimidation, and it resonated deeply with audiences hungry for heroes who mirrored their values and aspirations. Even within the debate itself, the atmosphere had shifted irreversibly. The stage, once dominated by Waters' aggressive interruptions, was now Crockett's. Every subsequent word he attempted to speak was met with subtle resistance, affirming of her presence that communicated not just victory in argument, but authority, dignity, and unshakable confidence. The juxtaposition of his faltering and her unwavering composure created a cinematic crescendo, a visual and auditory demonstration of what it meant to wield power through restraint rather than force. As her 10th sentence concluded, the effect was instantaneous and undeniable. The studio erupted in applause, some tentative at first, as if uncertain whether it was appropriate to acknowledge such a crushing rhetorical blow, then swelling into full recognition of the triumph they had just witnessed. Camera angles captured every reaction, hands clapping, jaws dropping, whispered acknowledgments, stunned expressions of commentators who had seen debates, interruptions, and confrontations countless times, yet never a dismantling executed with such precision. Waters' attempts to respond were met with silence, not defiance. The room had collectively shifted its allegiance to the weight of truth and calm authority. His usual tactics, smirk, interruption, dominance, had failed spectacularly. The pattern that had served him for years had finally met its antidote: preparation, poise, and moral clarity. Crockett had not merely survived the gauntlet. She had transformed it into her moment of absolute control, a lesson in resilience and strategy for every viewer, every commentator, every online audience member watching in real time. The power of that single sentence extended far beyond the studio. Clips would circulate for weeks, analyzed, celebrated, and shared across countless platforms. For viewers who longed to see courage, intelligence, and integrity prevail over arrogance and spectacle, it was a watershed moment. The hero had spoken and the villain had faltered. The emotional resonance lingered, a palpable reminder that preparation, dignity, and focus could dismantle aggression more effectively than any outburst, and that a single, well-timed sentence could redefine an entire narrative. The studio fell silent, and the online world erupted. The moment Crockett delivered her 10th sentence didn't just end the debate, it ignited a digital wildfire. Within seconds, social media feeds were flooded with reactions. Hashtags like Crockett wins, her mic drop, and dignity over disruption began trending nationwide. Memes appeared almost immediately. Split-screen images showing Waters' smirk frozen mid-interruption beside Crockett's composed stare. Captions celebrating restraint and intellect over bluster and arrogance. Clips of the sentence looped endlessly, shared, dissected, and remixed across platforms, amplifying the moment far beyond the confines of the studio. Celebrity voices joined the chorus. Journalists and commentators, usually quick to polarize, found themselves united in admiration. Tweets from well-known figures punctuated the moment. "This is what leadership looks like. Jasmine Crockett just schooled a master of interruption." Even politicians weighing in from across the aisle couldn't ignore the spectacle, acknowledging the precision, patience, and moral clarity that had defined her response. The coverage wasn't just about politics, it was about character, about the demonstration of composure under pressure that inspired millions who felt unseen or underestimated. The contrast between public reactions to the two figures could not have been starker. Waters' style, once praised for its audacity, was now dissected as reckless and domineering. Clips of his interruptions were paired with criticism across news outlets and social feeds, the narrative pivoting from confident provocateur to the man undone by his own tactics. Crockett, on the other hand, became a symbol of calculated resilience. Every calm, precise word she had delivered was amplified in retweets, opinion threads, and viral commentary, reinforcing the idea that preparation and poise could outmatch aggression every time. Online communities erupted in discussions, debates, and analyses. Viewers replayed the moment repeatedly, dissecting her phrasing, timing, and tone. Political forums exploded with commentary on the policy points she had made, but the majority of the conversation revolved around the method. How Crockett's composure transformed pressure into dominance, and how her strategy exposed the flaws in a confrontational, interruption-driven approach. Opinion pieces began appearing almost immediately, highlighting the significance of the exchange. Headlines celebrated her as a figure of integrity. Crockett turns debate into masterclass of dignity. And, Waters interrupted, Crockett commanded a lesson in rhetoric and resolve. The ripple effect extended far beyond the debate stage. Late-night commentators referenced the moment repeatedly, breaking down the tactical brilliance of her approach. Podcasts and online video channels dissected her delivery, turning it into a case study in how strategic patience and preparation could prevail under pressure. Even classrooms and activist groups seized upon the clip as an example of effective communication, leadership under duress, and standing firm in the face of disruption. Each retweet, each article, each viral clip magnified the reach, embedding the moment into cultural consciousness. For viewers, particularly those who identified with Crockett's values, the impact was deeply personal. Many saw in her victory a reflection of their own struggles: patience in adversity, preparation in the face of challenge, dignity despite constant interruption. Her performance validated the idea that composure, intellect, and integrity could triumph over noise and arrogance. Waters' repeated interruptions, once a tool of dominance, were now a lesson in hubris. Crockett's measured response, a model of leadership. The conversation extended beyond applause and tweets. Policy analysts, commentators, and journalists debated the broader implications, discussing how such a moment could reshape narratives around civility, public discourse, and the power dynamics of televised debates. The moment transcended partisan lines, becoming a reference point for how skill, strategy, and character can turn the tide even against seasoned provocateurs. But beyond the viral moment, a deeper lesson emerged. In the wake of Crockett's decisive 10th sentence, the true significance of the moment began to settle in. It was no longer just a debate clip circulating on social media or a viral news segment to dissect. It had become a lesson in principle, strategy, and character. Watching her dismantle arrogance with calm authority, viewers were reminded of a universal truth: dignity, composure, and preparation will always outlast bluster and aggression. Power, it seemed, was not in raising one's voice or cutting others off. It was in listening, understanding, and responding with clarity and precision. Crockett's performance illuminated the strength that comes from preparation. Each pause, each measured phrase was built on a foundation of experience, education, and empathy. She demonstrated that knowledge coupled with patience could transform adversity into triumph. For audiences who had endured interruptions, dismissals, or marginalization in their own lives, her example resonated deeply. It wasn't merely a political victory. It was a reflection of what is possible when courage is paired with intelligence and moral clarity. Her composed response also reframed the idea of courage. Courage is often imagined as boldness in the face of danger, but Crockett showed that true courage manifests in restraint, in the ability to hold one's ground when provoked. and in the wisdom to turn confrontation into opportunity. Viewers, especially those who felt unseen or underestimated, saw themselves reflected in her resilience. Her triumph was validation that service, integrity, and preparation mattered more than aggression, more than performative dominance. The moment was a reminder that lasting impact is built on substance, not spectacle, and that character can shape public perception far more than bravado ever could. As the debate faded from the headlines, the resonance of her victory continued. Teachers, mentors, and leaders cited the moment as an example for their students, employees, and communities. Discussions emerged about how composure under pressure and strategic thinking could redefine success in both professional and personal arenas. Crockett's calm authority became a blueprint for leadership, a tangible reminder that even against relentless interruption or intimidation, one could prevail with dignity and intelligence. The cinematic arc of the moment, the buildup of tension, the interruptions, the precise delivery of the 10th sentence, created an emotional crescendo that lingered long after the cameras cut. It wasn't just the words themselves, but the timing, the presence, the unwavering focus that elevated the moment into something extraordinary. Audiences experienced a collective release, a surge of admiration, and an unmistakable sense of inspiration. The hero had triumphed not through volume or spectacle, but through mastery of self, clarity of thought, and commitment to principles. Ultimately, Crockett's victory extended beyond politics. It became a metaphor for the challenges faced by anyone navigating a world filled with noise, interruption, and arrogance. The lesson was clear. Resilience is cultivated through preparation. Strength is expressed through composure, and influence is achieved by aligning action with principle. Viewers were left with more than a viral clip. They were left with a story that reinforced their values, inspired reflection, and encouraged them to embody dignity and integrity in their own lives. Because in the end, it wasn't just a debate, it was a lesson in resilience and truth. Jasmine Crockett's 10th sentence didn't just end a debate, it shattered expectations, commanded respect, and reminded us all why dignity matters more than disruption. 9 interruptions tried to silence her, but one carefully measured response changed the narrative entirely. The story we witnessed wasn't merely about a televised clash. It was about courage, preparation, and the unshakable power of standing firm in your truth. For viewers who felt the frustration of being talked over, dismissed, or underestimated, Crockett's performance was more than a moment. It was validation. It showed that composure and integrity can overcome even the loudest attempts to dominate a conversation. It demonstrated that leadership is not about aggression, but about patience, insight, and the willingness to let principles speak louder than interruptions ever could. Now, it's your turn to be part of the conversation. Share this video, discuss the moment with friends, and engage in political discourse with the same respect, thoughtfulness, and courage that Crockett exemplified. Subscribe to follow more stories that celebrate the power of intelligence, preparation, and moral clarity in the face of chaos. Your voice matters, and every act of reasoned engagement helps shape the culture of dialogue we all want to see. Remember, dignity triumphs. Courage is contagious, and the power of calm under pressure can redefine outcomes, both on screen and in your own life. This wasn't just a debate. It was a reminder that when we stand prepared, speak truthfully, and hold ourselves with integrity, we have the power to change narratives, inspire communities, and leave a lasting mark. The moment has passed on screen, but its lesson echoes far beyond. Be bold, be poised, and never underestimate the force of truth delivered with calm precision.